All right, our next team, team 12, is CDE observation.
Hello, everyone. We're Team CDE Observation. We're going to talk about representing imaging findings as common data elements using a template engine. So we have our team here led by Dr. Tarek Alkassan. So let's describe the clinical context here. Radiologists are very selective about language for reporting findings. You know it. I know it. We're all thinking it. It's been a common problem for a long time. But now we have AI results. And how do we describe AI results? How do we report them? Is everyone on the same page? We need a framework for how an AI tool can create these standard descriptions of findings. But it's time consuming to create templates locally. You can have different opinions. You may have to reach consensus in a practice. You may have to update things periodically, right? As our grading criteria has changed, as the way we describe findings change, all these things are in motion, are in flux, and they add to this cumbersome task. So our solution is to provide AI solutions with a findings template and to plug these into the report. In this process, we can build a library of templates to facilitate this endeavor, crowdsourcing these templates with an open library that radiologists can either contribute to or they can borrow from and tweak for their personal preference. What we're going to show you today is a template engine that features a user interface that actually allows radiologists to browse through these observation templates. And the observations are structured data that's, using our quotes here, invisible. The radiologist would put together or select a template for their practice based on the desired reporting findings. And they're able to see the associated generate text that would actually be plugged into the report. We're going to go through a live demo here in just a moment, but a couple of stills to show you how this would work. So as you can see at the top, you'd select from the observation example. This is where you can select those predefined templates. You can flip through those available sample findings here as observations. The next field will show you the common data element set ID, identifying that finding type, in this case, RDE S44 pneumothorax. The observation itself is a JSON representation that encodes pertinent data elements for a given finding, leveraging those common data elements. Each element, as you can see, for example, lung tissue collapse is represented there with an element ID for each attribute. And the value, again, is shown, for example, here with the lung tissue collapse for the associated finding. Then as you scroll down on the page, we'd come to another field that would actually be a field where a block of text is inserted for if a pneumothorax is present. In this case, this is the mustache template that the radiologist actually insert. They create this template and essentially say, this is how I want the description to look like in my report. This is where the different field values go. This is where this is basically a positive finding, but this can, and we'll get to a negative finding in just a moment. But here's the last field where you hit submit and you see a preview of the plain text that actually populates a report. So going through this library, a radiologist can select whichever templates they prefer. As we dig into the specific element ID here for presence, in the last example, we had all these values, these elements and values that described a pneumothorax, but not every case has a pneumothorax. What if it's absent? Well, here's a template for an absent finding. And as you can see, there's an option with the same mustache template. The block of text is actually inserted is that last piece for pneumothorax is absent, generating this plain text in the report that there is no pneumothorax. So let's actually get into before we get to the demo here, all these templates are open. They're on GitHub. I just want to flip through, provide some links for those that are interested. You can go into each file for the actual observation examples that we've created. So let's go into our demo here, and I'll turn it over to Tarek for this part.
Okay, so here's the demo. So we have, it's a small Node.js backed application with a React front end. So there are a bunch of sample observations here. The idea is to show, part of our idea here was to show examples of CDE labeled fire observations. So for example, here's one for an ankle fracture showing, various attributes of an ankle fracture that are present. Here's one for pneumoperitoneum, showing that, pneumoperitoneum is present on the right side in this patient. Here's one for traumatic brain injury with all of the values that are associated with that. A lot of our work here was done on pneumothorax. So you can see as Ali showed in the slide. So here's an observation for a pneumothorax. And then we have created the ability to start working on sample templates for these in Mustache. So template 1 for pneumothorax this isn't an editable field. This is just kind of loaded as an example starting point. And the idea is it shows, you can see the size and side fields are plugged in. You can see this block that indicates when plural separation is included. This block that indicates, that should only be shown if the signs of tension field is present. You can do the same for lung tissue collapse. You can do the same for the idea with the question of whether there's an associated chest tube or not. And then you can click submit and you can see, what the generated text is. But the key thing is that, for example, we can change to a different pneumothorax observation and see what our template would look like in that case. And you can see that the values are slightly different. Or we could choose to play with the template itself and say, hey, we want this to be slightly different. Say, for example, that we don't want to include the size category given here. So we're going to take that field out, and we can submit it. And now you see that the small piece went away there. And as we were talking about before, we can also deal with the fact that sometimes things are absent, and we want to be able to display something graceful in that case. So the final, to put some context on it, the final idea of it is to bring us into the ability to incorporate this and to build out things for the open imaging data model, which we're attempting to work on, which is intending to create open source structures for representing a coherent and integrated way of accessing all kinds of information, but especially about imaging findings. So, this is kind of the bigger picture of it, but we've focused on kind of this observation piece, which is based on being able to represent imaging findings as CDE labeled fire observation objects. And this is just so as part of this, we built out some of the open source tools for accessing and working with those, which we're going to be pushing into kind of the major repository for that project.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any very quick questions? 10 seconds.
It's quick. I don't know, it's 10 seconds. So essentially what you're kind of doing is a presentation state for these results.
Exactly.
And currently modeling it as if that's something that's sort of built into the product as a configuration at the tail end. Any thought about whether that might be appropriate to put in as a standard type thing that's sort of built in more?
I think it should be, don't you?
Yeah.
But this goal is just to demonstrate that it's practical. It's just to show kind of what a lot of
And what kind of results
look
you
like,
can achieve.
and that to do at least something simple but concrete with them, so that people could start to get an idea of the potential power of the idea of the overall data model.
And to make it more accessible, so I think especially we were talking about, for someone without a technical background, it'd be intimidating to approach this, but with tools like this, you can really help make this more accessible, more relatable, and actually hopefully push that into production.
Thank you so much. Team 12, CDE observation.